Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to tell you guys what zero I use on my 22s. I got here a Ruger 1022. The zero that I use is 15 yards, and I'm going to tell you guys why I use it. So the first thing I'm going to mention with this 1022 over here, the scope that's on it, right? This Holosun 503CU was basically designed to go on an AR-15. Okay, and most of the scopes that you guys are gonna buy today are intended for AR-15s because they are the most popular guns in America. So with the AR-15, you've got a line of sight that is basically about 2 3/4 inches above your barrel. Okay, and because of this difference, you have to pick a zero. Okay, now I know that most of you guys watching this are going to be somewhat familiar with this information, but we're talking about 22s here. So for a lot of people, this is going to be new. So let's talk about the double zero. Okay, so I've got a chart here. All right, and if you look over here, I have a barrel with a scope over here, right? And if you look at this, basically this line over here, that's my line of sight, right? So the line of sight from the scope is straight, okay? So what we do with the barrel is, since the scope is about 2 3/4 inches above the barrel is essentially pointed slightly up so that when the bullet comes out, at some point it intersects the line of sight. So with this 1022 over here, using the 22 long rifle, I have picked 15 yards. Right, 15 yards is where that medium, not the big plate, the small plate with the stripe going through it is at. Okay, so what I've done is I've picked a zero at 15 yards. So because the barrel's pointed up, bullet rises, it intersects it at 15 yards. So that's point of aim, point of impact. When I put my dot, if you look at the head over there of that target, you'll notice uh, three paint chips, right, that are touching each other. So I put the dot on that spot, and pretty much all three bullets were touching each other. Okay, so wherever I put the dot, that's where the bullet goes, right? That's at 15 yards. And then what happens is, because the barrel is pointed up, right? If I was shooting at further distance, the bullet would continue to rise, right? So at around 50 yards, it's going to reach its apex, right? That's the high point, which is about 2 3/4. I'm just going to say 3 inches above that line of sight. Okay, and then gravity is going to overcome it, start pulling it down. So at 75 yards, I get my second zero. It crosses back down. So at 75 yards, you're probably not going to be able to see it well over there, but there's another red target over there. At 75 yards, same deal. I put my dot on the target, and the bullets go where the dot goes. Okay, so at 15 yards, point of aim, point of impact. Okay, at 50 yards, I'm 2 3/4 inches high. At 75 yards, again, point of aim, point of impact, and then my bullet starts dropping. So at 100 yards, it basically drops 6 inches, right? So I'm 6 inches down. And if you look at the my targets, right, the ones that are hanging on the wood over there, they're about 12 inches tall. So at 100 yards, if I put my dot, anywhere above, basically, if you look at that the bottom, right? Because if you look at the bottom, if I put my dot anywhere between the thickest part of the target and the top of that plate, it's gonna hit it. Okay. So the reason why I use it's down. The reason why I use the 15-yard zero is because from zero distance all the way to 100 yards, I can put my dot in the center of a 12-inch target, and I can hit it without having to hold over or do any adjustments, right? So that's why I use the 15-yard zero with the 22 long rifle. Now, I mean, can you use something different? For example, let's say you set your zero at 50 yards, which I have tried, right? So if you set your zero at 50 yards, what's going to happen is it's gonna come up, it's gonna kiss it at 50 yards, and then it's just gonna start dropping. So you get a single zero. But what would have to happen at 100 yards, I need to hold above the target, right? So I have to hold, like, from the center of my target, I have to hold a full, 6 inches above the target and make adjustments. And then if I go out to 150 yards, now I kind of have to guess where I have to hold it, because at 150 yards, right, when I'm 6 inches low at 100 yards, at 150 yards, I can go 12 inches high, and I can hit these targets. What I find is, if you're using a dot and if you try to hold over more than 12 inches, it's because you can kind of look at your dot and know where 12 inches above the target is. But then if you try to hold more than 12 inches, like if you try to hold 18 inches or 24 inches, it becomes too much of a guessing game. So I have found that the most I can hold over a target is about 12 inches, and be like consistent every time. I mean, I can go 2 feet over the target, but then I start seeing that my groups like really start opening up. Okay, so that's why with the 22s, I like using that 15-yard zero, because from zero distance all the way out to 100 yards on these targets that are 12 inches tall, I can put the dot on the target, like in the center of the target, and I'm going to hit it every time. Right. Now, if you're using a different zero, like let's say you're using the 50-yard zero, right? It's not, between zero distance all the way out to 75 yards, it's not going to make a difference. You'll still be able to hit that 6-inch plate. But then it becomes a guessing game once you get to 100 yards and start going beyond that. That tends to be more of a guessing game. Okay, so it doesn't make a difference whether you're using a 15-yard zero, a 20-yard zero, a 50-yard zero, if you're only going to be shooting inside of 75 yards with the 22. But if you plan to shoot, let's say 100 yards and 150 yards regularly, like I do, the 15-yard zero works really good for me. So, and anybody that's new to this concept, with the standard AR-15, right, like I got over here, what is very common is to use a 50-yard zero, right, with your 5.56, which gives you that second zero at 200 yards, and then at 100 yards you get an apex, which is about 4 inches high. Okay, but same deal, So these numbers would change. So instead of that being 15, it's 50, then apex 100 plus 4 inches, second zero 200. Sometimes people will use a 25-yard zero, which now that will give you your second zero at 300 yards. And that's great if you're out in the desert. I'm not out in the desert, so for the type of shooting that I do, I use a 50-yard zero for my ARs, and I use the 15-yard zero for my 22s. Now, one other thing I want to talk to you guys about, if you look over here, okay, I got a standard AR-15, right, shoots 5.56 caliber, but what I did is I took out the 5.56 bolt, right, and I put in this CMMG 22 conversion bolt. Okay, so what that does is it allows, since the 5.56 and the 22 long rifle are pretty much the same diameter, this conversion bolt allows me to shoot these 22 long rifle, right, same things over here, 22 long rifle, in my standard AR-15s that normally shoot 5.56. But here's the thing, this scope is zeroed in for 50 yards, okay? So at 50 yards, I got point of impact. At 100 yards, I'm 4 inches high. At 200 yards, I got my second zero. When I put the 22, when I put that 22 conversion bolt in there, those zeros don't transfer over. So what happens is, I'm gonna pause this camera because I got a plane flying overhead and you guys are gonna start losing me. Hold on. Okay, airplane's almost done. Until you start doing videos, you don't realize how loud those little airplanes are. I mean, things like way up, I don't know, 10, 20, 10,000 feet maybe, not, and it's still so loud. Anyway, as I was saying, I got an AR-15 here with a 22 conversion bolt. This has a 50-yard zero, but when I put the 22s in there, all that changes, all right? So what happens is at 50 yards, basically my point of aim is now 6 inches high. So I have to go 6 inches high in order to hit the bullseye at 50 yards. And I have to record this. Okay, yeah. And then at 100 yards, with that 22 conversion bolt, I am 12 inches high. So I have to go 12 inches high. Now, at 150 yards, remember what I said earlier that, you know, if you're trying to hold over more than 12 inches with a dot, it's really hard to lose your frame of reference and know it's very hard to know the difference between 12 inches and 18 inches or 20 inches. But the nice thing is about this scope, it has that 65 MOA circle. So at 150 yards, right, what happens is I've got that scope has a dot with a 65 MOA circle, and if I'm shooting at a target that is basically 12 by 12, which is basically more or less the size of a torso, if I anchor the bottom of my 65 MOA circle to the bottom of that 12-inch target, that gets me very close to the center. Okay, so I use the 65 MOA circle that way. So on a 12-inch target, which let's say about the size of this, right? So when you have your dot here, what you're going to do is dot's going to end up someplace up here, right? So what you do is you use the big circle, right, the 65 MOA circle, and you anchor the bottom of the circle to the bottom of your 12-inch target, and your bullets are going to hit pretty close to the center. A couple of things are going to affect that. I mean, first, length of your barrel. With these 22 rifles, you're probably using a 16-inch, but with the conversion bolt, you could just as easily be using, an AR pistol. So that's the nice thing about the conversion bolt. You can pretty much throw that conversion bolt into any AR of any barrel size. So the other thing that's going to make a difference with these 22s is the bolt weight, right? Is it 36 inches? Is it 36 grains? Is it 40 grains? So the weight of the bullet is going to make a difference, probably more than the weight of a bullet, let's say, of your 5.56, right? Because I mean, that's what I have found. I mean, when I go, let's say, from a 6.2 grain to a 6.2, from a 55 grain to a 6.2 grain, 5.56, at 100 yards, it's a really minor difference. But with the 22s, when you go from 36 to 40 and back, you're going to see a bit more of a shift with these 22s. Okay? So, hope that information was useful to you guys. And basically, that's But my standard zero on a dedicated 22 rifle is 15 yards, and I have experimented with 20, with 25 yards. There's lots of things out there that people will use, and they're inside of 75, up to 75 yards. They're all good. It's not going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference if you're trying to get to 100 yards and get all the way out to even 150 yards. That's where I find that 15-yard zero makes a difference, because at the 15-yard zero, basically, remember what I said earlier here, right? That line of sight is straight, the barrel is pointed up. Well, if you're using a 15-yard zero, your barrel is being pointed up very aggressively. All right, you got a very aggressive climb. So what that's going to do is it's going to rise up, and then you're going to get really high at being plus 3 inches at 50 yards. So that's going to push out that second zero a little further out. Versus, let's say if I use a 50-yard zero, well, then it's just going to touch it at 50 yards, and then from there it just keeps going down. So the goal here is to push the second zero out as far as possible. So I hope you guys enjoyed that information. Let me know what zero you guys use, why you like it. Maybe you have some ideas that I haven't thought of. So put that in the comment section. I'm a big believer in there's more than one way to do things. Okay, so it's not like it's my way and this is the best way and the only way. I do it the way I do it for a very specific reason, and in my case, that specific reason is because I shoot at 100 yards, going out to 150 yards with 22s. Now, for example, you might have a completely different scope. You might have a scope that has like turrets on it, that where you can change your point of impact. You might have a completely different scope. Everything I said is based on a standard AR scope, right? That has that 2 and 3/4 inch riser. Thanks for watching. Drop some comments. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Odyssey. My channel name over there is Pocono Tactical. And also on Rumble. On Rumble, I am Pocono Guns. I'll talk to you all soon.